And when you have detached that person from their culture, again, we had to be very careful to destroy all of the African roots from which we came, the rituals, the customs, the practices that built village and community. Those things were severed, as well as the language. And what we understand now, based on data that has been collected in contemporary society, that severing people from their culture is tantamount to the death of the self. It's completely. The death of the culture is tantamount to the death of the self.
Could you say that again, please?
That when you destroy the links that a people have, any people, with their culture, you destroy them. Because it is by far more important, the ideas of community and family and custom that make up what we call culture is far more important than any physical disaster that can happen to a people, because you've removed them from the essence of who they are. And in the words of Randall Robinson, that the worst thing that you can do to a people is to rob them of the memory of themselves. And so if you don't know who you are, you most certainly can't figure out where you're going, which is what we're seeing. And in addition to that, what we have folded into that are the contemporary issues, the mess that everyone's in, the materialism, the drug abuse, the over-sexualizing of, well, everything, right? So you begin to look at that and you fold it on top of what I call post-traumatic slave syndrome. All of the qualities that I'm saying are the residual impact of that, those centuries of oppression unaddressed, and the perpetual miseducation and demonizing of all that is Black. And when you look at that, you're looking at the actual destruction of a people. That's what it results in. If, of course, you don't do anything about it. If you don't stop and go, whoa, someone's trying to sell me some strange Kool-Aid here, and I'm not buying it. When you take it upon yourself to educate yourself, when you take it upon yourself to not allow the media to teach you who you are, when you take it upon yourself to control what is going into the hearts, minds, and bodies of your own children, and that you don't leave that to a system that has spent most of its time trying to avoid the truth. Hence the need for Black history, you know, the need for historically Black institutions, because the only way to balance that is to maintain, is to remember Sankofa. The only way to retain that sense of self, to rebuild that sense of self, is to have an understanding of who you are. And you cannot know that without understanding your own real history, which is the reason why we have to have it. Because if we don't do it, there is a disincentive for contemporary educational institutions, because, well, who looks bad? Who's going to look badly in this? And like I tell people all the time, they're not going to let little Cindy and Miss Ann feel uncomfortable about the lies that have been told them all this time about their history. Because you have to understand, little white children have received the same miseducation, misdirection, lies that we have. And so they perpetuate it with their children as well. So unless someone steps out of this cycle of insanity and says, okay, wait a minute now, this is not correct. And then we begin to not only state the truth, but to produce curricular materials and insist that they be infused into the curriculum. And as to whether or not we can ever have a level playing field, I think that when that notion of send us your poor, you're tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, if the whole notion of liberty for all people, and the pursuit of happiness was true for all people, then maybe so. If we stood firm on the principles that America lied about, if we actually lived them, if institutions were in fact just and equitable, but those are the ifs. If all of those, then, certainly you can have a level playing field. But like I said, how we get to that, if we can get to that, that's going to be the choice of a collective will of people that are going to not by folks blowing up stuff, not by force or disaster, but by an act of human will. If we can do this by an act of human will, well, most certainly we can level the playing field. But who's going to convince, who's going to put the bell on the cat? Who's going to convince this giant that they should share? Who's going to confront the lies so much so that people have to see the truth of their own history, their own barbarism? And how are they going to in any way appreciate the inclusion of the African contribution? We'll let you talk about your fruit and your festivals. We'll let you talk about a little bit about your art and your dance and your clothes. And we will present that as your history, as your contribution, as if African people did not contribute. I mean, the kind of knowledge that stabilizes civilizations. I mean, because that's the African contribution. But they would better like you to believe, well, you have interesting food. And isn't that nice music? But we don't want you to believe that your scientists, your doctors, your architects, your engineers, you name it, on every single level, to the inventions that make and allow life to be so warm and fuzzy in America, as if Africans had no part in that. And that's the travesty, you see. But that it would mean to open that door, to open the door to the contributions, and not only of Africans, but of other people of color that have been summarily erased from curricular materials. So to continually by omission, train and educate every child in America to believe that everything that is of worth and of value has come from Europeans.
Let me ask you, what does that do to white people to be fed a continuous diet of distortion and lies? Because it is.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do to their, not so much their personality, but their psyche?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly what it does. It produces the pathology associated with unearned privilege.